Folks, I am surprised. Welcome to my initial reaction for the Fantastic Four First Steps. This was a film that I had absolutely low expectations for. I'm not going to lie to you. I think that Marvel has taught me over the course of a handful of years that I'm either going to get a message or I'm going to get slop or some combination of the two. But I'm not going to lie to you guys. I was drawn in pretty quickly. I would say that the first half of the film especially is just chef's kiss. But I don't want to get ahead of myself. I would say that the other thing that Marvel has taught me was that whenever you sit down to watch anything, whether it's on the silver screen or your screen at home, you're going to get a convoluted, character-infested storyline that jumps around way too much and is probably going to be a lot of filler and not a lot of substance. But First Steps actually kind of does something that other movies have not, and that's take it and put it in a completely different universe. Now, I realize Deadpool did something like this, but this one really does contain it in this singular 828 universe, which, by the way, is a reference to Jack Kirby's birthday, the guy who actually created the Fantastic Four. And the reason that I like this was because it allows the story to be a self-contained one. You're not expecting a million other characters or plot holes to develop because other characters didn't show up. It really does allow you to focus on the story of the Fantastic Four. There's no cross-promotional extravaganza happening here. You get a tightly written Fantastic Four story that doesn't really meander thanks to outside influence from other stories. From here, I'm going to split the video from a non-spoiler part to a spoiler part, so let's get to the non-spoiler part first. The characters are, for the most part, incredibly chosen, I thought. And I want to start off with who I thought was the standout for me, which is Sue Storm. Now, according to the Access Media, Sue Storm was going to be replacing Reed Richards as the leader of the Fantastic Four team. That does not happen, actually. Reed Richards is still very much the leader. But I would say that both the writers and Vanessa Kirby actually do her justice. She's not this wilting lily. She's not this damsel in distress. You know, she is a woman who has power and is utilizing that power for what I would say are reasons that finally step away from the tired Marvel Disney girl boss trend. The MCU is finally giving us a strong female character who is strong not for selfish reasons or to prove something to a society that thinks that she's weak because she's a woman. She's being strong because she has to be, because there's a further deep-seated reason for her to do so. And the refreshing aspect of this is that it's all based on her maternal instincts and desire to be a good mother, which I'll be honest with you, it was not something that I thought Marvel was capable of at this point. But my favorite is probably Ben Grimm, played by Ebon Moss-Bachrach, who the Thing in this movie is the best depicted yet. Of the four, I feel like The Thing is the one that really grounds us most to reality, despite the fact that he's made up of orange rocks. He's the one who's out interacting with the people the most. You know, he's entertaining children. He's talking up a school teacher. He's going out and he's buying cookies. Like, this is the guy that is kind of our bridge from the citizenry to the superheroes. And I love the fact that they didn't just turn him into this bruiser like they did in other movies. I love the fact that they humanized him. He wears his emotions on his sleeve. He's kind of the warmest member of the entire group, but he's also like not just punching things. They're displaying his piloting skills. They're displaying his intelligence. I love the fact that they rounded this guy off. Also, I love the fact that they actually got him into the Jack Kirby design where he has the stone eyebrows. I really think that that does a lot, weirdly, to help sell his emotional layers. We were told that Johnny Storm would be somewhat effeminate. I'm happy to say that no, we get comic accurate Johnny Storm. He's cocky, he's hot-headed, he loves women. The only flaming thing about him is his superpower. But I will say that they do cleverly kind of put the womanizing aspect of Johnny Storm in the background because they have him focus to the point of obsession on the Silver Surfer, who is a female in this movie, and I will get to her in a second. And he's played by Joseph Quinn, who I think really does a good job going from Stranger Things on the home screen to Johnny Storm. But this brings me to Reed Richards, played by Pedro Pascal. And like many of you, I have Pedro Pascal fatigue. Does this mean that Pedro Pascal is bad as Reed Richards? I would not say that. I would say that he's pretty decent as Reed Richards. He does sell the character in a way that I think kind of makes sense for the movie. This Reed Richards is a character who has the literal weight of the world on his shoulders. He is the Earth's protector. They kind of make that very clear. Like, he is the mind behind all the madness. And Pascal plays that as a man who is clearly tired, but also borderline obsessed and in love with his work. I'll give Pascal that. He does a very good job of playing that character in this movie. That said, I do kind of agree with Gary from Nerdrotic that John Hamm probably would have been a little bit better of a choice here. He just kind of looks and sounds more like the Reed Richards that I think about in my head. Also, I honestly would have loved the return of John Krasinski. I think that he actually did this kind of character very well, and I feel like he was disrespected in the last Doctor Strange movie. Like, he just kind of gets shoved aside, and I didn't feel like that was fair. I really feel like John Krasinski could have given us more Reed Richards. It now seems like that's not going to happen. Now it seems like Pedro Pascal is going to be the head of the Fantastic Four and possibly the leader of the Avengers, which I'm not sure how I feel about that. Another thing that did kind of bug me, they don't really put Reed's powers on display very often. It is more a utility than an actual power, I would say, which is fine, because what they really wanted to do here was focus on Reed Richards' intelligence, his capability to think and invent and solve problems, which I will say they do very well in this movie. But the best character of all, in my opinion, is the setting. I do love that 60s aesthetic that is also kind of futuristic, but it does create some weird plot holes and like technological inconsistencies. Like, a lot of the technology in this is still analog and still working with vacuum tubes, yet there are clear instances where there's microprocessor technology happening. The villains. Oh, man. Ralph Ineson plays Galactus, and to be honest with you, a great choice. Galactus looks pretty intimidating on the normal silver screen. I would love to know what he looks like in IMAX, so if you have seen it in IMAX, let me know in the comments down below. The one problem that I do have with him, though, is the fact that whenever I think of Galactus, I think of this threat that is just godlike. And in this movie, I think they power him down quite a bit. This kind of takes away stakes, at least a little bit for me. I was kind of expecting more out of Galactus. He has these powers that are just kind of inconsistent. Like, for instance, slight spoiler here, he can induce labor in women. And if you can do that to a human body, what else could you do that he just decides not to later on? I would probably say that there are a lot of inconsistencies in this film that will probably bother me on subsequent watches, but for this initial watch, I could put him aside. But this brings me to what I've been calling the Silver Surfer, or the Silver Surfer. I would say that she is probably the weakest character of the bunch. It's not just because she's a female when, the character is traditionally male. I feel like that gender swap was absolutely unnecessary. I feel like a lot of her focus is spent with this romantic subplot with Johnny Storm that ends up paying off in the end, but not in a way that I would say is satisfying. The character design for her isn't necessarily bad, though. I will say that there were moments where the VFX could have been a little bit more baked in the oven. The VFX on her has been a big complaint, I will say, for this movie, that it's not the worst I've ever seen, but there are moments that are pretty neat. For instance, there is one scene where she is literally surfing on lava, and it just looks really cool. It's a really cool visual, I'll give her that. But I will say overall that the character feels a little undercooked. I would have preferred the male version just because it doesn't sell well in this movie. They were trying to mirror the Sue Storm story in The Silver Surfer, but there wasn't enough focus on it. And I do feel like some of that would have been avoided if they did use the male Silver Surfer in this case. I feel like they complicated things too much by gender swapping this character. Overall, I would say that one of my biggest complaints about the movie is the VFX team. Once again, I feel like there were moments where they really knock it out of the park. But there were other moments where I was like, that really could have been improved on a little bit because that is weird. Specifically when it comes to Franklin Richards, the baby of Sue Storm and Reed Richards. I don't know if you guys remember, what was her name? Renesmee from the Twilight movies, where it's just like, bro, that is straight out of the Uncanny Valley. A lot of that happens in this movie too. Also, there were times where the VFX artists, I feel like, just did not understand how to animate physics or inertia. There's this one scene where the Fantastic Four car is coming to a stop after like almost skidding out of the air and onto the ground. And Sue Storm just kind of opens the door and gets out. A massively pregnant Sue Storm does this. Overall, I enjoyed the movie, but I would say the first half is definitely better than the second half. And here's where we're going to start getting into spoiler territory. So if you've watched this far and you still plan on seeing the movie, go ahead and click off now. So this movie picks up 4 years after they became the Fantastic Four, which is okay in my book, to be honest with you. We've seen a lot of origin story skipping lately, and I'm not mad about it. But this does require a heavy amount of exposition, which I would say that the movie doesn't do a bad job of displaying, to be honest with you. In fact, unlike other superhero movies, we're seeing the Fantastic Four save people and being superheroes for, in little snippets, and I like that. But the film really starts to begin whenever Sue Storm finds out that she's pregnant after she and Reed have been trying for years. And it's here that we get Franklin Richards, the baby who is the side character / main MacGuffin of the movie. Very soon after, the Silver Surfer shows up and announces the Galactus is on his way and he's going to eat your planet. Right after she announces that everyone's going to be consumed by Galactus, there's this shallow kind of meet cute between Johnny Storm and the Silver Surfer, which kind of sets up a subplot that I really kind of feel like should have had a little bit more focus put into it. But it's done in a way that doesn't necessarily slow the film down at this point. The Fantastic Four promise everyone, hey, we're going to go protect the planet and go to him and not let him come here. So they go off in an FTL-driven ship, which, again, technological inconsistencies, what? And they find Galactus in the middle of consuming another planet, and they basically ask him, hey, could you not eat ours, please? And Galactus effectively says, sure, just give me the baby that's currently in your stomach, because he is a cosmic being of some sort, and he could take my place, to which the Fantastic Four rightfully deny him. And I think I strongly related to this scene because I am the father of a baby boy. Oh yeah, you wanna talk into it? Say hello. Did you just burp into my microphone? And if some celestial monster came up to me and was like, hey, give me your son in exchange for your safety, I would say, you can't have my son, but you can take this dick. And then I would have thrust it right into his eye. And it's actually really probably the best sequence in the entire film. You see Ben's piloting skills on real display here. You see Reed Richards kind of calculating things while his wife is trying to go and give birth to their son. You see Johnny Storm trying to use lasers from the ship to push the Silver Surfer back.
Johnny, quit screwing around! I tell you how to drive the ship, don't tell me how to kill sexy aliens!
It is a fantastically done sequence. I did not mean to use fantastic there. That was an accident. And they get home, and immediately the press converges around them, and they're like, oh, how did you defeat Galactus? And they said, well, we didn't, actually. We tried to negotiate, but he said that he wanted our son in return for the safety of the planet, and we weren't about to do that. And this naturally causes everyone to turn against the Fantastic Four, who they accuse of being selfish and not giving up their son in return for everyone else's life. But it's at this point that the film just kind of starts to devolve, and there are moments that are just so stupid that it did take me out. Not enough to kill the film for me, but enough for me to go, what? Reed Richards begins desperately trying to find a way to stop Galactus from eating the planet. And Johnny Storm kind of starts obsessing over the language of the Silver Surfer and trying to learn it. But as this is happening, the public is becoming increasingly hostile to the Fantastic Four, to the point where they start gathering outside the building like a baying mob, wanting them to hand over the kid. And this is where it just gets stupid. Sue Storm decides to take baby Franklin out into the mob and just gives a speech that makes everyone calm down and be okay with the Fantastic Four again. Now, those who have been following me for some time know that I work in socio-political journalism, and if there's one thing that I have learned about mobs, it's that they are not going to allow you to peacefully walk out into the middle of them, and they're definitely not going to allow you to give a speech quietly or unmolested in any way. In a movie full of superheroes and FTL technology and giant cosmic gods, the most unrealistic part of it for me was a mob acting civilly. And it proceeds to get dumber. Reed Richards comes up with this idea that he's going to teleport the entire planet to a different solar system where Galactus can't find them, which, okay, that's a neat idea. Let's go through with that. But in order to do it, the entirety of the planet has to get together, meaning all the countries have to agree to this plan. And not just that, they have to donate all their resources and time and labor to creating these little teleportation devices all over the planet. And they just do it. Again, one of the more unrealistic parts of the movie in my eyes. And it gets even dumber because they go, hey, in order for these devices to work, everyone has to shut off their power. Like there has to be a complete, total global blackout. And the entire planet just goes, okay, we'll do that too. It's a very utopian, we're all in this together kind of moment. And it's like, bro, that wouldn't happen in real life. You would have people who would not care. Who would actively be trying to sabotage it. You would have nations trying to say, okay, we'll help make this thing, but what do we get out of it? You know, that's just the reality of global politics. But in this movie, everyone's just on board with whatever Reed Richards says. And just as they're about to teleport with like 6 seconds on the clock, the Silver Surfer shows up and starts systematically destroying the teleporters. And the only one left is the one in New York. And that's stopped from being destroyed by Johnny Storm, who has now learned her language and is proceeding to deduce her entire backstory about how she became the Silver Surfer and guilt trips her into leaving them alone by letting her listen to the victims of the planets that she had helped destroy previously. And this leaves Reed Richards the only one plan left, and that's, hey, we can't teleport the planet, but maybe we can teleport Galactus himself. And they decide to utilize the very last teleporter as kind of like a trap for him. And they decide to use Baby Franklin, the one thing he wants, as bait. But, you know, this is a Marvel movie, so this plan does go completely awry, and eventually it gets to a point where Galactus actually does get the baby, and the Fantastic Four has to try to stop him from taking the baby away and destroying the planet. And here is where I would say that the film gets a little girl bossy, but I kind of want to give credit where it's due to this moment. Sue Storm single-handedly restrains Galactus, but she doesn't do it because she's this hyper-powerful woman who finally realized her own inner strengths like every other Disney girl boss movie. She does it because it is pure rage and desperation to save her child. And this moment kind of endeared me a little bit to Sue Storm because I felt like I was finally seeing a woman display enormous amounts of power, not because she's a girl boss, not for some selfish reason, not for identity purposes, but because she's literally trying to protect her own child, which I think is a much more deep-seated reason to do anything. Like, where did she suddenly get this huge burst of power from to literally restrain a cosmic lowercase g god? Well, her baby was in danger and she was desperate. This moment is kind of undercut a little bit by her telling Reed Richards, hey, go save our baby while I am literally restraining a god. But the effort does kill her. She doesn't just go, haha, girls get it done. You know, it was a moment of sacrifice, and that I think really does speak volumes for the story and Sue Storm as a character. Reed Richards does try to resuscitate her, but he can't. And then this uncanny valley baby is put on top of her and through some undefined power manages to bring her back to life. As for Galactus, Sue Storm does manage to push him into the portal, but he almost escapes. But then the Johnny Storm subplot kind of pays off, where Johnny Storm is going to sacrifice himself in order to push Galactus into the portal for good, but he is Rose Tico'd by the Silver Surfer, who then sacrifices herself instead. Essentially, the women save the day. I will say that this ending does feel a little bit more earned than previous Marvel productions where the women end up showing up to save the day. But it is still kind of like a, okay, Marvel, we see you. But overall, I would say it's not a bad Marvel movie. In fact, I would say it's probably the best Marvel movie to come out since Spider-Man No Way Home. I would say that the heart of the movie kind of overpowers some of the sillier moments. And I actually want to give Marvel props here for actually giving the nuclear family a time in the spotlight and in a very positive way. The theme of family is at the center of this movie, and it's not just found family. It is blood family, marriage, child, uncle, and best friend. So should you see it in theaters, my final verdict would be yes. I think that you should. I think that Marvel really has put its best foot forward, or at least the best one it has at the moment forward, and trying to move in a direction where the movie actually has quality to it and decent story writing. I think that deserves to be rewarded. Is it a perfect movie? Not by a long shot. I think that some of Marvel's bad habits are still infesting these movies, but I feel like they're trying to move in a direction where the important things are the important things. And that to me, I think deserves attention. But let me know what you think about it below. If you've already seen the movie, I want to hear your thoughts about it. Also, I have started memberships on this channel. Thanks to you guys, we have been monetized and I am building it out now. So if you enjoy this channel and you like what I do, please consider becoming a member. I really appreciate it. And I'm going to build that membership out more in the very near future. But thank you so much for watching. Really appreciate it. Please leave a like, a comment, and I will see you in the next initial review.